Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar, The Value of Vulnerability. The value of vulnerability when you're speaking, when you're presenting, when you're facilitating. And as I read around vulnerability, I'm finding that vulnerability is also a leadership trait, and I will touch on that briefly. So welcome to everyone who's joined the webinar. A few people still to log in. Peter Dew's my name. I'm a public speaking trainer and coach, and I love to help people find their voice, be more confident and more effective every time you get up to speak, present, facilitate, train before a group of people. How to participate in the webinar: ask questions as we go, take notes, and think and apply the situation, the information to your own circumstances. Is there anything you would do differently from some of the knowledge I'm going to share with you? Is there anything you might incorporate in an upcoming training or presentation? My belief is it's not so much what I share with you that matters, it's more what you do with it. So think of an action, something you can do that may help your next presentation. So the question that people ask me: does sharing my vulnerability with an audience, does that make me appear weak, afraid, or not up to the job? Should I let people know that I don't necessarily know where we're going, that I haven't always been able to be successful in my public speaking? Does that make me appear weak? And a lot of people, and leadership especially, come from a position that they must be the guru, they must know all, they must show strength, they must show resilience, they must come across as 100% confident and never having had any difficulties, failures, or doubts. So should we share our vulnerability from the platform? So the question is, does vulnerability make us weak, not up for the job? And I would suggest no. And I'm going to call upon a couple of people to support me here. Sigmund Freud said that out of your vulnerabilities will come strength. And one of the things from the corporate world, especially in innovation, is fail fast, learn quick, and then fix. So a lot of innovation, a lot of new ideas come from failures. And mentioning those failures or those lessons, the learning along the way to your success, gives great strength and great credibility. Thomas Edison did not just come up with the light bulb. There was thousands of prototypes, which the press, the newspapers at the time, called failures. But out of that came this wonderful thing we call the light globe. Brené Brown, and if you haven't seen her TED Talk, can I recommend that you do look at her TED Talk. In her book, Daring Greatly, she talks about how vulnerability gives us that chance to show our courage and our compassion and our connection. And she talks about vulnerability as a leadership trait. So to say her quote exactly, armoring up or covering our vulnerability denies us the opportunity to face uncertainty, risk, emotional exposure, and utilize our courage, compassion, and connection. So if we hide our vulnerability, all those other traits disappear. Compassion, connection, courage, emotional connection are all things that help us from the stage connect, build rapport, and build trust with our audiences. So no, revealing our vulnerability is not necessarily a sign of weakness or that we're not up to the job. Now, I mentioned leadership. I've read a book recently called The Culture Code, The Secrets of Highly Successful Groups by Daniel Coyle. And he's looked at groups like the All Blacks rugby union team. He looks at the Navy SEALs, the US Navy SEALs. He looks at successful restaurant teams, successful schools, successful comedy schools. He looks at successful air pilot teams and concludes that vulnerability is one of their ways to success. So it's not a weakness. And a particular story he shares is when there's a catastrophic emergency with a United Airlines aeroplane, and there's no books or guides for catastrophic occurrences because catastrophic means there is no recovery. So these pilots lost complete control of the plane, the flaps, all the navigation, everything was gone. And they were able to land it through it as a team by controlling the engine speeds to steer and to change altitude by slowing the engine down. One person on the right engine, one person on the left, and that was the only way they could bring this plane down. And the key moment was the captain did not step up and say, okay, I'm in control, because he had no idea what to do. The captain stepped up and said to the other team members, I have no idea what to do. If anyone's got any ideas, please come forward and help us bring this plane down. He revealed his vulnerability. He revealed his inability to land this plane. He revealed that he had no idea what to do in this circumstance. And the vulnerability and the other people coming up with ideas was what brought this plane down. I'm hoping I've convinced you that vulnerability is not a dirty word. So how does vulnerability help? This is how it helps you with your speaking. It helps you build connection with the audience. Wow, you're real. You are not perfect. You're not the guru. You've had your struggles. Build your credibility. So you're asking people to come on a journey with you to take risks, and you've done it yourself. And not only have you done it yourself, you've failed and you've recovered, and you've come through tough times and you've succeeded. It hasn't been prototype 1 success, prototype 2 success, prototype 3 success. Brilliant. We've got the electric light globe. It was prototype 1 fail, prototype 2 fail, another failure, eventually coming to success. So it demonstrates that you know what you're talking about through your failures, through your vulnerability. It gives people hope. If you can do it, if you can be successful, if you can share your struggle, then maybe I can as well. It also shows that you're honest. You're not trying to hide anything. You're prepared to reveal the entire you to your audience. You know, not that those risks, those self-doubts, those moments of vulnerability, those moments of fear where you persevered with courage, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, despite maybe going blind, like those team of pilots, that there is no manual written for this particular scenario of a complete failure of all the hydraulics and their ability to control the plane. So being vulnerability takes you to a greater connection with your audience. My own vulnerability, some of you know of my story. Some of you don't know of my story. So I'm a person who stutters, and my stutter was really bad, really severe. And for 10 years of my life, I chose to be an elective mute, writing words down rather than trying to speak. And this came from people ignoring me, laughing at me, walking away from me, avoiding me, hanging up the telephone on me because I was unable to get words out. Now, I've come a long way since that particular time. However, I still stutter every day. And when I take the stage, when I do keynote speaking, when I do training, I know that during that day I will have some stutters. When I share with people that I'm teaching to become better public speakers, to be more confident, to overcome their fears around public speaking and presentation skills, when I share that vulnerability, it comes across as, wow, if Peter can do public speaking for his living, then I can certainly step up and do public speaking in my new role as a leader, in my new role as a trainer, in my new role as president for my sporting club, in my new role as a spokesperson. And my vulnerability, in fact, becomes my strength, becomes part of my credibility. When I'm asking you to come on a journey and face your fears of public speaking, I do that from a position of having to do that journey myself. So my vulnerability as a person who stutters and still has fear and nervousness around public speaking is a great rapport builder, a great credibility builder, a great honesty builder with my audiences. And people are more likely to follow me, trust me, and come on a journey with me. So that's my own vulnerability that I share with every workshop, with every keynote I do. Often our vulnerability can be described as the elephant in the room. Why try and hide it? I mentioned I will stutter during a keynote and during a workshop. I cannot be 100% fluent for the entire time. So in other words, people are going to find out about it. Nowadays with social media, people can Google us, look at our LinkedIn profiles, and if we've been bankrupt, if we've lost jobs and been unemployed, and we see it as a sign of weakness or a sign of failure, people can probably find out, or they probably know about it anyhow. So if it's related and it builds strength and credibility in what you're speaking about, then don't be afraid to mention it. It's probably there. Your nervousness, if you stand up and you're shaking and you're sweating, it's probably there. Some people will see it. So I don't see a problem in announcing up front at your presentation, at your keynote, thank you for inviting me to speak. I don't enjoy public speaking. Actually, I get quite nervous, and you'll probably notice that my hands are shaking. But what I want to share with you is 4 fantastic lessons that I've learnt. 5 tips to retire with your superannuation, or whatever your knowledge, expertise that you're sharing with the audience. Just announce it. It's the elephant in the room. Show your vulnerability. Move on to your content, your lessons, and people will appreciate that. Vulnerability helps you to expand your comfort zone. And I love a quote by Ginny Rometty. Ginny Rometty, she is the CEO of IBM Computers, big multinational corporate. Virginia is her full name. So Ginny Rometty said that growth and comfort cannot coexist. So the way we grow is to get out of our comfort zone. So vulnerability, when we take risks, we will feel vulnerable, but this is how we grow. And by taking our audience on this vulnerability journey and encouraging them to be vulnerable, we can also help our audiences grow. So if you want to learn, if you want to innovate, if you want to grow, upskill, you need to take risks and get uncomfortable. I've done something over this last 6 weeks, culminating tonight, that makes me feel very uncomfortable, and I'm going to be very vulnerable tonight at 7 p.m. I've enrolled in a 6-week stand-up comedy course. Tonight is week 6, and tonight I perform a 5-minute live comedy set, 5 minutes, in front of a live audience. I'm not very funny, which is why I've decided to do this 6-week stand-up comedy course, to try and learn to be a little bit more humorous and put a bit more comedy, a bit more humor into my training and presentations. But am I out of my comfort zone? And will I be vulnerable tonight on stage in front of 100 people? What if they don't laugh? Of course I'm vulnerable. But this is how we grow. So hiding our vulnerability therefore keeps us safe, and we tend to stay within our comfort zone and within our existing limits. Vulnerability gets us out of our comfort zones and often leads to new growth, new experiences that we would otherwise not have. This is the power of vulnerability. And I think if you share your vulnerability, targeted vulnerability, on stage, it really does build your credibility, it builds trust, it shows you're honest, and it shows you that you've been successful in your own journey. So here's a tool that you can use in everyday life to help you be more vulnerable. It's called the Johari Window. And there's 4 quadrants. The first quadrant is what's called the open area. You know it, and it's known by others. So when I stand up and speak, most people know that I'm 6 foot tall. They can see it. I'm a tall man relatively, and I know my height as well. I also know that I have very little hair. I'm a bald man. Other people can see that I'm bald as well. Down here, we have my hidden area. I know it. So I know that I stutter. I know where I went to school. I know how many years I've been married. My audiences don't know it. So this is my hidden area. This is what I keep to myself. Over here is my blind area. So people know it about me, but I may be unaware of it. So maybe I'm a bit arrogant. Maybe I scratch my backside as I walk across stage and I'm unaware of it, this distracting habit. When I give people feedback in my workshops about their nonverbal communication, many people are unaware that they're doing these distracting things on stage. They're not aware of their level of and ah, and you know, those filler words. So this is your blind area. And there's this other area which exists. The audience doesn't know it about you, and you don't know it either. This is called your unknown area or your hidden potential. So here's how you can use vulnerability to unlock some of that hidden potential. As we discover more about ourselves, we can change, adapt, and use those skills. So this is your hidden potential. So how do you find out about your blind spot? You ask for feedback. And when people tell me that I'm not very funny, that I need to add more humor into my presentations, I can do something about it. When people tell me that I'm coming across as arrogant or conceited, I can soften my tone. When people tell you that you come across as aggressive and you thought you were just being assertive, you can modify your baseline behavior to become more assertive and less aggressive. Or maybe you're passive aggressive. Maybe you walk away. Maybe you white ant people. Maybe you talk about people behind their backs and you're unaware that this is seen as passive aggressive. One of the nonverbals I do is I used to put my hands over my mouth when I was thinking, and those people who were deaf and relied on my lip reading couldn't understand what I was saying. So now when I do that resting position, I put my fingers under my chin in that thinking pose as opposed to one or two fingers across my mouth. All of this I have learnt from feedback. You need to ask people to give you feedback. And this is how you unlock potential, by discovering some of your blind spots, your blind areas. Some of your hidden area that people don't know about you, you unlock that by revealing your vulnerability, by revealing stuff about yourself. So when I tell you that I stutter, that you may not know because I'm doing okay on this webinar, and my fear around my stand-up comedy tonight, you understand that even though I am a public speaking trainer and coach, I still experience fear when I try something new, something different, a new keynote, a new topic for the first time. And revealing this vulnerability, revealing my fear, in fact builds strength. So this is shared discovery. You give me feedback, I tell the truth and be honest about some areas of my life that you don't know about, and all of a sudden we're unlocking this hidden potential. That's the Johari window. Takes courage, takes vulnerability to ask for feedback. What if you don't like the feedback? What if the feedback tells you something about yourself that causes you concern, that you didn't want to know? That takes courage. That is vulnerability. What if sharing something about yourself is then used against you by some not so nice person? There's a risk involved with that. But this is how we grow and unlock potential. So that is the Johari window. It has been around for a long time. Created by two psychologists, John somebody and Harry somebody. So when you put John and Harry together, you get the Johari window. Now, please understand, I'm not saying you need to reveal every dark secret. And there are times when you may decide not to reveal your vulnerability. So at job interviews, if you're stretching and going for a higher level and you're feeling that maybe you really don't have the experience, or you're just having a go at this job just to see how you go, I would not reveal that in the job interview. And within the legal system, let's say you're a witness, the opposing counsel will try and discredit you and make you seem an unsure witness. So I wouldn't reveal vulnerability in the witness stand. I would be confident in my evidence. I'd be confident in the statement that I'd written before, and I would stick to my guns. This happened to me once when I was the witness to a motor vehicle accident. So I'm a witness for the prosecution. The defense lawyer for the driver kept asking me questions. Are you sure that this happened? Could it have been that your vision was obscured? And I need to be able to say, no, this is what happened. I saw it with my own eyes. I took a note of the number plate. So there are times when you may need to be confident and not reveal vulnerability or uncertainty. But generally, where your vulnerability is around being honest, overcoming adversity, a little bit of self-doubt, success, coming through a rough journey successfully, I think vulnerability helps you as a speaker, as a presenter, helps you build that rapport, that honesty, the connection, the credibility. You've walked the talk. You've walked the walk. You're not just talking the talk. So in my opinion, vulnerability is a tool that we can use effectively in our speaking and our presentations to enhance our connection, credibility, and therefore effectiveness as speakers and trainers. So vulnerability is not a dirty word. I've got upcoming workshops all around Australia, from Darwin in October, Karratha in October. We've got some workshops in Onslow, Brisbane in November, Bendigo in November. You'll find all of these on my websites. I'll just go to my website, so www.peterdew.com.au, drop down menu for events and webinars. And the next webinar, I've already got good registrations for this, 6 ways to be a more engaging speaker. Vulnerability may be one of those 6 ways. Unless you're an engaging speaker, your audience may not take your message. Humor could be one of the 6 ways as well. I'm going to end the webinar there.